transportation planning policies. And we know that they don't employ proper transportation planning policies, which the Federal Highway Department defines as being a cooperative process designed to foster involvement by all users of the system, such as the business community, community groups, environmental organizations, the traveling public, freight operators, and the general public through a proactive public participation process conducted by the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is an MPO, the State Department of Transportation, our state DOT, and transit operators. So our MPO in Oklahoma is the Association of Central Oklahoma Governments, ACOG. ACOG went on record back in 2021 that OTA had never participated in the Encompass 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and that the proposed turnpike routes through Cleveland County were never included in their final plan that's good through 2045. Instead of using a cooperative process, the OTA planned these routes in secret, secured their engineering consultants prior to publicly announcing the access plan, and then raced full speed to design and construct along predetermined routes before having done any impact studies, before discussing these potential routes with the affected municipalities, and before securing permissions to cross federal lands through the Lake Litterberg watershed and across the South Canadian River. Then, when they were near 60% designed, they threatened the city of Norman with a partnership resolution with a sign or else ultimatum. They needed the city of Norman to sign onto a partnership agreement with them to fulfill their Turnpike Enabling Act statute and give them permissions to come into the city of Norman and construct their turnpikes. Statute 69, section 1716B requires the OTA to get permissions from the city to use, quote, any real property which may be necessary or convenient to the effectuation of the authorized purposes of the authority, including public roads and other real property already devoted to public use. The city smartly said no, and won in a big way. The OTA cannot use or destroy Indian Hills Road, nor connect to any city infrastructure. They recently instructed their engineering consultants to remove all planned and designed service roads and access points from the east-west connector, except for the ODOT-owned State Highway 77 and I-35 interchanges. This will not only reduce the footprint of the planned turnpike, but save the city tens of millions of dollars in future maintenance and infrastructure costs. But because of their consistent failure to use proper transportation planning policies, not only was the OTA previously denied passage across the Bureau of Reclamation-owned fee title lands in December of 2022, which they still have not rectified, necessitating a significant shift in route, but they're now denied passage on and connectivity to any City of Norman infrastructure, which will significantly change the revenue projections used to justify these routes and obtain the revenue bonds. These denials will also force massive shifts in routes that will affect a different set of citizens. So my question is, with all these denials and route design changes, shouldn't the OTA stop their design, finish their studies, or should I say start their studies, get permissions, and then reassess the financial viability of these toll roads? There's definitely a better way to conduct transportation planning policy.
All right. Amy, thanks. All right. We'll open up for questions after we're done if you guys have any questions, so feel free to ask those. Now we're going to talk about, I'm going to bring up Cassie Hirschfeld here in just a second to talk about one of the things that Amy talked about when they're taking away all the things that they promised that they were going to give to the city of Norman. They're taking away access roads and access points. We feel like that's going to change the traffic and revenue studies that they based their revenue projections on to sell bonds, which, anyway, I'm going to let Tassie talk more about that. So this is Tassie Catherine Hirschfeld, Dr. Hirschfeld. So.
I wanted to talk to you today because Dr. Serrato explained the City of Norman's resolution has huge implications for the financial models that were used to base these $500 million. So one of our financial wizards has been able to find enough data and information and public records to actually create some updated computations. And we feel that everybody needs to hear these numbers because they will affect everybody in the state. So the original revenue projections for the east-west connector indicate the highway would cost approximately $1.5 billion to construct and require $3.7 million for debt service. Billion for debt service. According to the traffic and revenue study included in the bond offering, the east-west connection will only bring in around $600 to $11 million. This means the east-west connector alone will operate $3.1 billion in the red, even before any operations and maintenance expenses are included in these calculations. The projections for the Tri-City Connector and the South Extension also show serious deficits, and we have on the table for you. The aggregate deficit for all three new alignments is likely to be in excess of $5 billion. This means Oklahoma drivers are going to have to pay this in the form of toll increases, none of which have been disclosed by the OTA to residents of the state. Recent events, including the City of Mormon's refusal to cooperate with OTA's planned construction and the Bureau of Reclamation's denial of the South Extension route, mean that even these sad projections are now no longer valid and fair. And the OTA is flying blind. So with these facts in mind, we strongly encourage the OTA to take the following 3 steps. We need to take responsibility for the poor planning and terrible decision making that has characterized every single moment of this process. From the initial planning that was not disclosed to the public, to secret meetings with certain individuals well ahead of time, to insistently denying that any violation of the Open Meetings Act took place, when in fact we believe it did. Step 2, inform Oklahoma drivers how much they're going to have to pay to subsidize these expensive failures. These roads will never pay for their construction costs, and all of these will be shifted to other toll roads in the system, which have already seen in some cases double-digit increases over the past year. And the last and most important is OTA must notify bond investors that the traffic and revenue projections used to justify the $500 million bond offering are no longer accurate and must be revised. If you were an investor, wouldn't you like to know that the probability of getting your expected return on this investment is now different from what you were promised in this official document? We believe all of these developments constitute material events that invalidate the financial models used to justify these projects. Failure to disclose material events is potentially a serious SEC violation, and we encourage the OTA to finally step up and do some due diligence, do some proper planning, and guarantee some accountability to citizens for this history of bad decisions. Thank you.
Cassie, thank you. One interesting tidbit I've discovered, the bonds that the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority just issued last fall, I believe they're paying interest, they're paying 8% principal for the next 20 years, and the rest of it they're just paying interest on 92% of it, interest only. It doesn't sound like good planning to me. Anyway, let me introduce to you Kelly Wilson, one of our crack researchers who wants to talk to you some more.
Hi, Kelly Wilson. I just wanted to talk with you guys a little bit about
Speak up, Kelly.
so impacted landowners and local government entities are key stakeholders in OTA projects, yet they are not brought into the conversation to participate in project planning until design plans reach around 60%. That's the point at which they're getting ready to start purchasing right-of-way. This is a point at which local governments are approached with an offer to secure a seat at the table by entering into a partnership agreement with the OTA. This window of opportunity is relatively short, and city leaders have very little time to acquire the necessary information they need to make informed decisions that will have a profound impact on their city and its citizens for decades to come. In the past, local governments have caved under pressure and signed these partnership agreements. They were operating under the assumption the agreement would secure certain benefits to the city or the county, and also to ensure they would be consulted in planning and implementation of the project moving forward. Unfortunately, this doesn't seem to be the case, though. What we know from reading through city and county agendas and meetings of previously impacted communities is that even after a partnership agreement has been signed, the OTA continues to leave leadership out of the process. And the OTA often requires these cities and counties to amend their original agreements, many times often to the detriment of the local city or county and always to the benefit of the OTA. So I have a few examples for you. The first one I'll talk about would be from the Driving Forward program with the Kickapoo Turnpike. The Turnpike Authority approached Oklahoma County Board of Commissioners and asked them if they'd like to finally have a seat at the table to talk about the turnpike coming through their area, and pitch to them the fact that they would purchase the necessary right-of-way, and then they would give that over to Oklahoma County to then build their frontage roads on. Oklahoma County moved forward with that resolution in 2016. The agreement stated that OTA would require the necessary right-of-way for the future frontage roads and then transfer it to the county to move forward with the construction. 3 years later, the OTA requested that the county enter into a formal agreement which restated the acquisition and transfer of right-of-way for the construction of those frontage roads, and also laid out the terms regarding repairs to existing county roads that were damaged by the OTA and its contractors during construction. Repairs totaled around $4 million, but the OTA would only agree to pay $1.8 million, which left the county on the hook for $2.2 million. To date, which has been 8 years since that initial agreement of partnership between the OTA and Oklahoma County, OTA has not transferred any property to Oklahoma County. No frontage roads have been built. The only result of this partnership thus far for Oklahoma County is a bill for $2.2 million to repair frontage roads that were damaged by the Turnpike Authority. So, as we've seen, Norman City Council stood firm. They have taken the time, they've decided they're going to take some time and try to do some research and make sure that the decisions they're making are going to be in the best interest of the city and our citizens, and I'm super grateful for that. It's often said when you're talking about the Turnpike Authority, and we hear this over and over again, that they're big, they're huge, they're powerful, you can't take them on, you can't say no. But what we're finding is that you can, and the city of Norman actually did that, and now we're kind of seeing some of the result of that. They're backing off of their plan. They're changing their plans based on the fact that we said we don't want this in our community. So I would just like to encourage other communities that come after us to take notes and know that your voice is powerful and it should be heard. And the statutes actually say that we do have a say. So I actually brought you guys a packet with some materials with all the documentation of this stuff. So anyway, so I think that was all right. Thank you.
Kelly, thank you. Anybody have any questions? We've got some handouts. Kelly, you have some handouts.
I do.
Believe she gave some of them to you all at the beginning. Here, just go ahead. I think our reporter's over here. Again, I think the old saying, watch what I do, not watch what I say. We're quite displeased with the performance of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority living up to their agreements with other cities and municipalities in dealing with the building of new turnpikes. We don't want that to happen in Norman. And again, I commend the Norman City Council for voting down the resolution to work in cooperation with the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority. With that, we will take any questions if anybody has any. Guys, why don't you come back up? You all know the answers better than I do. So.
Randy, it's my understanding, anyone can answer this. It's my understanding that OTA says they have legal authority to construct these turnpike routes without having a partnership with Norman. Is that how you understand it, and what other action can you guys take? Well,
Again, I think that's probably up to a judge, but reading that statute, it seems to me that they, by their enabling act, is that okay? Sorry, I have trouble with that. With that, according to their enabling act, they are required to work in partnership with the municipalities that they come through. So I'm sure that that's certainly up to interpretation, but that's our belief that they need to have that in place.
And what do you plan on doing going forward?
Well, I think the move is in their court at this point. So far, from the very beginning, we've been reactionary. I mean, we didn't bring this on ourselves, and we've only had the opportunity to take action when we find out what they're going to do or not going to do. So, trust me, we will be making plans as we find them to be necessary, but I can't say specifically what we intend to do at this point on that particular question. So.
The OTA has said that Norman still has time to come up with ways to interact with the OTA. How do you expect, or how do you wish Norman would do that?
I wish they would stand firm on no resolution whatsoever. to me, it's to the benefit of the city of Norman to not go into this resolution. If the OTA says they're going to put in all these frontage roads, then it's Norman's responsibility to maintain those, maintain the traffic lights, all the traffic. It'll be a gigantic expense to the city of Norman, and the OTA is not going to be doing anything to help with those costs as they come forward.
And OTA also has said that they plan on, their plans don't include frontage roads without a City of Norman resolution. Do you want frontage roads? Do you want Norman to?
I don't want a turnpike at all. So I think the frontage roads, in my opinion, the frontage roads are more important to the developers, and
They're expensive
Yeah.
for the city.
yeah, and they are expensive. Can be here. You can probably answer that better than I can.
So the whole deal with the frontage roads is that supposedly the OTA pays to build them, but then turns over the maintenance costs, which bootstraps our children and grandchildren with that maintenance forever. And we already have an overbuilt environment. We don't need to have more concrete in our watershed. And so I believe that having no service roads actually is better for the city of Norman, because they're already, in my opinion, building through a no-build zone. They shouldn't be building in our green belt. They shouldn't be building in the top of our watershed. And so it's smart on the city of Norman to push back and say, okay, we don't want it. We don't want development right there. We don't think that the turnpike should be there. And we're going to continue to fight. And so to answer your question about what we can do, so they still have to get federal permissions. And we believe that the federal agencies are going to stand firm. But the OTA is seemingly going around the back door to make the permitting process a bit easier. I'd love for you to ask this question to the Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality. They've submitted a permit change to the Corps of Engineers, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, under General Permit 12 and General Permit 14. And they have added 2 waterway designations. They've added Appendix B waterways, which is endangered species waterways, which is the South Canadian River. And they've added SWS waterways, which is private and public sensitive waterways. And that is Lake Thunderbird. And with the addition that nobody can seem to explain to me, they are allowing that general permit to cover bridge crossings without an agency having to go through the individual permitting process, which would require a NEPA environmental impact statement. And so the public comment ends this Friday, the 13th. And we have yet to receive any information back from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers about what actually, besides these 2 waterways, are being amended in this 5-year permit. And so we feel like something's going on at the federal agencies where the OTA is trying to make the permitting process relaxed, so they don't have to do as many things to cross that sensitive 7,000 foot wide South Canadian corridor. And so they don't have to do anything particular when they're coming through our impaired waterway, 303D Lake Thunderbird. Does anyone else have anything to say about that particular? But I would love for someone in the press to ask what the deal is with those 2 new amendments that are just coincidentally coming right before the OTA wants to try to cross the South Canadian River and the Lake Thunderbird watershed. And you might call me cynical, but I've been lied to for 2.5 years, and nothing that they say they're going to do they've ever done. And so I really believe that something's happening on the federal permitting that we need to pay attention to, and we have 4 days with which to make a comment.
Any other questions?
Why is it important to keep fighting and to keep this out in the public's mind?
It's really important because the citizens are the government. We are the people, and the government is supposed to work for us, and they're not doing what we want, and they're trying to just run us over. And we've proven, Pike Off OTA and the Oklahomans for Responsible Transportation have proven over these last 2.5 years that when you get a large group together, you can't be ignored. They could pick off one of us, they could pick off 2 of us, but they can't pick off thousands of us. And so it's really important for the citizens to know they have a voice and they have a way. And the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority is waiting for us to get tired. And as soon as we step away, they're going to come in and do it. And we don't say die until it's over. And it's not over. And it's really important for the citizens to know that they can stand up and fight, because it's a fight worth having. It's our future and our children's future.
and it's our drinking water.
Can I add just a short?
Sure.
And to the question of like, why are we still here and still energetic and still enthusiastic about this fight? From my point of view, every single step of this process has been through informal channels, backdoor, crony capitalism. None of it has taken place out in the light of the day. It makes it not only undemocratic, but anti-democratic. They are actually recreating some of the worst features of Soviet centralized planning. We are not allowed to speak at their meetings. All of the research that we do, they ignore, or they just hire a publicist to try and discredit. And so these are really core values that we all share, regardless of party, regardless of whatever political beliefs we may or may not have. It's just wrong for a state agency to operate this way in a democratic country.
I just had a couple of things I wanted to say about the frontage roads. I think if you dig into that a little bit deeper, you'll find that it was a little bit disingenuous. They said that they wanted to partner with the city of Norman so that we could have those frontage roads and have the economic development that follows. But if you look at it a little bit closer, you'll see that in the bond validation case, in their application to the Council of Bond Oversight, and also in their official statement to the bond issuer, they actually included in their traffic and revenue study that they would be building these turnpikes with all of these on-offs, and they specifically listed every single one of traffic volumes for every single one of those on-off points of access. So they are absolutely depending on the revenue that's going to be generated from those access points. So it kind of feels to me like it's more of a bargaining chip, like, oh, we need you guys to sign this resolution so that we can, get these access points for you. But they're the ones who actually need that. And so now that we have come to this realization, I think the ball is actually back in our court again. And I just think that's really important to take away from this, that the cities and the counties and the citizens actually do have a voice, and we have to keep pushing for that. And we just never know what's going to turn up next that helps us get the voice there.
I had a question just for clarification.
Sure.
The page on the revenue projections, are you guys saying that these figures were inflated, or that somebody lied about these, or just presented incorrectly?
No, they're just terrible. Okay. And OTA didn't release these numbers in this format. They will not tell the public just how bad these projects are. The data's there for a clever person to find and do this kind of analysis, which thankfully we have an accounting wizard who did this. But no, and again, this is the day before their board meeting. We wish someone would ask OTA, why are you trying to build a project that is going to be in the red from day one?
Well, and I can share an example too about the traffic and revenue studies. By their own trust agreement, now correct me if I'm wrong, by their own trust agreement, they are required to produce traffic and revenue studies before they issue bonds. As I understand it, when they built the Kickapoo Turnpike, during that project, those revenue and traffic studies were not delivered till well after the construction process had already started. Am I correct on that?
And they started property, well,
Go ahead.
With the Kickapoo, they started property acquisition before the bonds were even approved. And so, I mean, to me, that just says what they're interested in is real estate, and they don't care so much about the road, which would also explain why they're willing to spend billions of dollars of other people's money to build a road the city doesn't want, the citizens don't want, because it really is about real estate developers making backroom deals.
Anything else? Nope. All right. I'm sure we'd all be available if anybody wants to do an individual cut with anybody. So thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.
And if anyone needs any of the information electronically, we can send it to you.